What are we likely to see with these two back-to-back games at Old Trafford this week? Because will Joel Glazer's letter, the open letter to the fans on Friday afternoon, make any difference? Now, they had given him, the Supporters Trust had given them Friday afternoon ultimatum. That's the deadline. We want to hear from you. So they did.
They did.
And he said, amongst other things, I want to acknowledge the need for change with deeper consultation with you as our main fan representative body across a range of important issues, including the competitions we play in. That's because they get their fingers burnt with the Super League. We also recognise the importance of fan and football interest. We're open to constructive discussion on how to reinforce that principle. Is that going to stop the protests this week?
Look, they wanted engagement. They've got engagement. They don't want engagement. They want to berate the Glazers. They want to get them out of the club. They loathe the way that they bought the club. They loathe the fact that there's been a vast amount of interest and dividends that have been paid. And I keep on having this debate on Twitter with infuriated Manchester United fans that keep telling me the same thing, which is, you don't get it. We've been protesting for 16 years. We never wanted them here in the first place. We never wanted this. We never wanted that. Our stadium's falling apart. Carrington's not this and Carrington's not that. And I look at it and say, okay, right, well, you've got the Glazers. I'm assuming you're enraged with JP McManus and John Magnier and Dermot Desmond for selling the shares to them in the first place. I'm assuming that your rage translates to those guys as well. But here we are now. You've got an engagement, and my understanding of the response is that's not going to be good enough. We want to see actions. And of course, actions will have to be the byproduct of words if there's any genuity behind it. But let's get it right. Whether Man United fans they don't want an engagement with the Glazers. They want to tell them what they think of them. Yeah. They want to tell them that they're scumbag purchase of the football club, using the club's money, and ignore the fact that £1 billion has been spent on players in the last 10 years, and that the club hasn't done, with the greatest respect to the enraged and infuriated Man United fans that are probably throwing coffee cups at the radio now. I'm not sure precisely what it is that Manchester United haven't done on the pitch as a result of the Glazers taking money out. They're happy with Alexis Sanchez taking 25 million quid out and doing absolutely nothing for it. They're happy with all the other profligacy, like 40 million for Raiola. But because the Glazers have taken some money, that's outrageous greed. I'm not suggesting that the Glazers model is the perfect model, but the Sheikh Mansour model and that kind of model and the Roman Abramovich model is also a model that has its own flaws as well. So I look at this and say, no, I don't. I think that there will still be some issues. I certainly hope that the moronic element that somehow seems to find some people condoning it and some people justifying and some people like Gary Neville explaining that's been 16 years in the making, or was that Roy Keane who said that? But the reality is that if you want to better engage, and the Glazers should engage better, if they're going to profit the way they have out of this football club, as very few owners actually can, then it would have been in their own self-interest to have at least perpetuated the myth that they were engaged. So they are the architects of their own downfall in terms of the perception. But do I think this will stop certain activists? No, I don't. And unless they get precisely what they want, which is 50+1, which, with the greatest respect in the world, as much as it may well have some moral turpitude behind it, is not going to work in our football, doesn't really work in German football because it means Bayern Munich win the league every single year, and isn't a model that really sits well with me, full stop, besides the understanding that it gives fans more involvement. I don't see this dialing back the narrative from certain fans because they've got an opportunity to advance an agenda. And as Alex Ferguson once said, there's always been this contentious issue about who actually owns Man United as far as certain people are concerned.
But is it not fair to say, Simon, that you'll always cut the Glazers and others a bit of slack because of out-and-out capitalism?
No, it's not, because I don't cut them any slack.
Profit is everything. Profit's the language you love.
No, it's not, Jim. If we're living in a business where football players are getting paid £200,000-300,000 a week, forget the fact that we're a working class sport. They're flying around the world and bleeding private jets, for crying out loud. We're talking about the fact that one of the few football clubs in the world that could actually provide the backdrop for a leveraged purchase are Man United, and that makes the Glazers huge opportunists. But football is fundamentally broken, and the idea that fans can just scream for the next billionaire owner who will do the same thing.
But can I just say, we're going over some old ground. We discussed this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we? But me and Simon both got hammered a little bit, and an old mate of mine, Caro, a good mate of mine, talking about lazy journalism, talking about the lack of success. He's not right, because I'm telling you now that if United were about to win the league when they played Liverpool last week, and they were in the final of the Champions League coming up in 2 weeks' time, whenever it is, those protests would not have been to the same level. The disgruntlement wouldn't have been the same level. They might still have been fuming about the Super League, and we agree on that. But it's about success on the pitch. And if you don't get success on the pitch, Then upstairs
it's
gets
coupled.
hammered.
I mean, you've got to give credit to them as well. It's coupled with two things. It's about success on the pitch and the absolute moral outrage of what the Glazers have been able to do.
With the fight, yeah.
But the same Glazers realise, Simon, he says it in his letter, we need to significantly increase investment in Old Trafford and the training complex.
Right. And they should have done it.
But why is it not done that before?
Well, ask Ed Woodward that question, because Ed Woodward should have dealt with that. That shouldn't necessarily need the Glazers to do that. If you've got to spend 200 million quid on a football stadium, you can borrow that money, put it on a 25-year deal, and capitalise your balance sheet with it. So it's actually an asset increasement. So there's no
bad
reason
delegation.
It's bad management on their part.
Yeah, but if the good fans hadn't agitated for this, we wouldn't have heard for Joe Glazer. We wouldn't have heard him
When was the first time we actually heard about the stadium?
That's
Gary Neville's narrative.
Well, it's the first time that possibly the mainstream media have heard it. I'm sure the Man United fans and the Man United Supporters Trust, who we heard from last week, will be telling us in no uncertain terms. They've been saying about it for years, right? And it's not right, if you purport to be the biggest club in world football, that you've got a stadium that has certain aspects about it which aren't fit for purpose.
No.
And especially if you're taking the kind of money that the Glazers are taking out with interest, dividends, and the servicing of debt, right? But the bottom line is that despite your outrage, please, and despite the fact they could do better on the training ground at Carrington, and don't ignore the fact that Man City got a free stadium when you're comparing and contrasting, because they didn't have to pay for their stadium. They got to move across to a stadium that's paid by the taxpayer. So when you're comparing and contrast between perfect owners, but let's look at the bottom line: is despite your outrage at how they bought the club and the fact that it's taken some of the spirit away from the club that you adore, what has it stopped you from buying? You buy £80 million centre-backs. You buy £60 million Bruno Fernandes. What
£50 million fullbacks.
£50 million fullbacks. What has it stopped you? You get people like Mourinho, who once upon a time were purported to be the best manager, the only manager that could go and manage Man United in the absence of Alex Ferguson. You've done all those things, and really and truly, a large proportion of the temperature of this particular room would have been dialed down if Man United were winning leagues.
Exactly.